The night was cold, and the rain did not stop. The streets were empty, except for a single figure walking slowly under the flickering lights. Her name was Lyra, and she was a widow. In her world, being a widow was worse than being a beggar. No family wanted her, no clan wanted her. They said she carried misfortune. They said her husband died because she was cursed, and so they cast her out. Her dress was torn and soaked. Her long silver hair clung to her face and shoulders. She walked barefoot, and each step splashed into the puddles on the stone road. The city around her was alive with sound, but not for her. There was laughter inside the warm cafes, bright lamps glowing in the windows. Couples sat together, friends clinked glasses. Merchants closed their shops in safety. All of them had somewhere to belong. All of them had someone to call family. But not her. Lyra pressed her arms around herself, trying to keep warm. The rain felt like knives against her skin. Hunger twisted in her stomach. She had not eaten since the morning. When she found a piece of stale bread in the trash, her body shook, her lips pale. But she kept walking because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering the night her husband died. The memory haunted her. His last breath in her arms, the blood on her hands. The angry voices of her clan calling her a bringer of death. They dragged her away. They shouted that no one must take her in. They said if anyone gave her shelter, they too would fall into ruin. And so she wandered from place to place. Doors slammed, voices cursed her children through stones. She was nothing. Less than nothing. On this night, when the storm was at its worst, she could not take another step. Her body was too weak. Her legs gave out and she sank onto the wet street. She sat with her knees pulled up, her arms wrapped around them. The cold water ran beneath her and soaked her completely. She stared at the glowing cafe across the street. She could see through the window. A man and a woman laughed together. They looked so warm, so alive. For a moment, she wondered what it would be like to sit there, to feel that kind of warmth again. But she knew it was not for her. No home wanted a widow. No heart wanted her. She was a shadow, unwanted, unseen. As she sat there, trembling in the rain, the door to the cafe opened. Warmth spilled out with golden light and the sound of voices. A tall man stepped outside, his shoulders broad, his coat dark against the storm. His eyes moved across the street and stopped on her. For a moment, Lyra froze. She expected him to spit, to curse, to order her to move away. That was what they always did. But the man did not curse. He did not spit. He stood still, looking at her as though she were not cursed. As though she were simply a person. His gaze did not hold disgust. It held something else. She could not name it. The people inside noticed. The woman at the table leaned forward and whispered to him, her expression a mix of concern and confusion. The man only shook his head and stepped further into the rain. He crossed the street slowly, and with each step, Lyra's heart pounded harder. Why was he coming to her? Why did a human care? When he stopped in front of her, she could barely lift her head. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her throat was too dry. The rain hit his shoulders, but he did not flinch. He reached down, pulling off his coat. And without a word, he draped it over her shaking body. The warmth of the fabric was shocking. She almost cried at the feeling of something dry against her skin. She shook her head weakly, whispering that he should not touch her. She was cursed. He would fall into ruin if he helped her. That was what she was told all her life. But the human only looked at her with calm eyes. He said nothing. His silence was stronger than any word for the first time in years. Lyra felt a strange thing in her chest. It was not fear. It was not shame. It was something like hope. She clutched the coat around her and lowered her head. The rain still fell. The city still laughed without her. But one human stood in the storm, not walking away, not turning his back. And that small act, in that cold street, was enough to change everything. Asterisk, the rain grew heavier. Turning the streets into small rivers, Lyra sat trembling under the weight of the human's coat. Her eyes were lowered, afraid to meet his. She waited for him to demand something in return. She waited for him to laugh at her or insult her. That was what others had done before. Kindness was never free in her world, but the man did not laugh. He crouched down so that his face was closer to hers. His voice was steady and calm when he finally spoke. "You'll freeze out here," he said. His words were simple, yet they cut through the storm like firelight in the dark. Lyra shook her head quickly. "No one is allowed to shelter me," she whispered. Her voice cracked from hunger and cold. "If you take me in, your house will be cursed. Your life will fall into ruin." The human frowned slightly, but did not move away. He studied her pale face, her wet hair sticking to her cheeks, her hands clutching the coat as though it were the only thing keeping her alive. Then he said softly, "I don't believe in curses." The words struck her. They were so simple, so direct. He spoke as if the heavy chains her people had placed on her life were nothing but smoke. For a long moment, she did not know how to answer. She wanted to tell him to leave her, to save himself, but her body betrayed her. She shivered and clung. Tighter to the coat, the man extended his hand, his palm open. His eyes did not look away. "Come with me," he said. "There is fire in my home and food. You will not survive the night out here." Her heart pounded painfully. She looked past him at the cafe. People inside were watching. Some whispered, others stared with open disgust. One older alien shook his head, muttering that the human was foolish. Another woman hissed that the widow would bring death to him. Their voices were sharp even through the glass. Lyra wanted to warn him again. "They will turn against you," she said weakly. "Your neighbors, your friends, they will hate you if you take me in." But the man did not glance at the window or the crowd. He kept his gaze on her, his hands steady. "Let them hate," he said firmly. "I will not leave you here in the rain." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she forced them back. She had promised herself never to cry again. Crying did not change anything. Crying did not bring her husband back. Crying did not stop the stones thrown by children or the curses whispered by elders. But in that moment, under the human's gaze, she wanted to cry, not from sorrow, but from something frighteningly close to hope. Slowly, her hand lifted. Her fingers trembled as they reached toward his. For an instant, she hesitated. She remembered every slammed door, every cruel word. Every night she spent hungry and alone. Could she risk believing? Could she risk touching someone who might actually mean his words? The rain fell harder, drumming on the stones around them. She finally placed her hand in his. It was warm, shockingly warm. He closed his fingers gently around hers, not tight, not forcing, only guiding. He helped her to her feet. She swayed, her body weak, but he held her steady. The coat slid from her shoulders as she struggled to balance. Without a word, he adjusted it back over her and supported her with his arm. It was the first time in years someone had touched her without fear. Together they walked through the rain. The cafe doors closed behind them, shutting out the murmurs and the stares. Lyra kept her head lowered, ashamed to be seen, but the human walked tall. His steps were strong and unshaken, as if he carried no doubt. They passed through narrow alleys and dim streets. The city around them seemed distant. Her eyes stayed fixed. On the ground, afraid to look at the home he was leading her to, she did not dare imagine warmth. She did not dare imagine food. If it was a dream, it would hurt too much when it broke. At last, they stopped in front of a small house. The roof glistened under the rain. A lantern burned faintly in the window. The man opened the door and guided her inside. The first thing she felt was heat. A fire burned in the hearth, golden and alive. The smell of bread and soup reached her nose. Her knees nearly gave out. The sudden comfort was too much. He closed the door behind them, shutting out the storm for the first time in years. She was not standing in the cold. She was not outside looking in. She was inside, in a home. The man took the coat gently from her shoulders and hung it by the door. He motioned to the fire. "Sit," he said. "Warm yourself. I'll bring food." Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to refuse, to say she should leave. But her body did not listen. She sank slowly to the floor near the fire. Her hands stretched out to the flames. Her skin tingled with the sudden heat. It almost hurt, but she did not pull back. She could not. As she sat there, she looked at the human's back as he moved through the small house. He was not afraid. He did not act like someone cursed. He moved with quiet strength, as though helping her was the most natural thing in the world. For the first time, she wondered if the stories of her people were wrong, if the curse was nothing. But fear, if maybe, just maybe, this human would prove it. And as the firelight touched her face, Lyra allowed herself to breathe, not as a cursed widow, but as someone who was finally being seen. The firelight danced across the small room, filling the shadows with warmth. Lyra sat close to the flames, her soaked dress steaming as it slowly dried, her hands stretched toward the heat, trembling not only from cold, but from disbelief. For so long she had been left outside in the storm, looking at warmth through glass windows, and now, for the first time in years, she sat inside. The human moved quietly in the kitchen space. His name, she soon learned, was Ethan. He stirred a pot on the stove, smell of vegetables and broth filling the room. The sound of the bubbling soup made her stomach twist painfully with hunger. Hush. She pressed a hand to her middle, ashamed that it growled so loudly. Ethan turned his head slightly and spoke, his voice calm. "It's almost ready," he said. He did not look at her as if she were a burden. He did not glance at her with disgust. He spoke as though she were simply another person, another soul, who belonged in his home. Lyra lowered her head. Her people would never understand this. They would say he was foolish. They would say he was blind. They would say he was sealing his own fate by letting her in. But sitting there in the glow of the fire, she did not care about their words. She only cared about the warmth. When Ethan returned, he carried a bowl and set it gently in front of her. Steam rose into her face. She could see carrots, potatoes, and pieces of bread floating in the broth. The smell was almost enough to make her cry. Her hands shook as she reached for it. She hesitated, looking up at him. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan looked at her for a moment, his eyes steady, his jaw firm. Then he said simply, "Because no one deserves to be left out in the rain." The words cut deeper than any cruel voice she had heard before. They were too kind, too impossible. She felt her throat tighten, but she forced the tears back. She had cried enough. She would not cry in front of him. Slowly, she lifted the bowl and drank. The warmth slid down her throat and spread through her body. Each sip felt like life itself. She ate slowly, afraid that if she rushed, the food would vanish. Afraid it was only a dream that would break if she moved too quickly. Ethan did not push her with questions. He sat across the room, watching the fire, letting her eat in silence. He moved like someone who had carried heavy burdens before, someone who knew how to give space. His presence was calm, not demanding, not impatient. When the bowl was empty, Lyra set it down carefully. Her hands were still shaking, but her body felt a little stronger. She looked at Ethan, unsure if she should thank him or stay quiet. Her people had told her that humans were dangerous, selfish, unpredictable, but this man seemed the opposite. Finally, she spoke, her voice breaking. "If they find me here, they will hate you. They will say, you are cursed too." Ethan turned his gaze to her. The firelight reflected in his eyes. "Let them talk," he said. "What matters is that you are safe tonight." The words felt unreal. She almost wanted to laugh at their foolishness, but her laughter would have been filled with pain. Safe, she thought. Could she ever truly be safe? Could one night erase years of being hunted, hated, rejected? Her eyes drifted to the fire again. The flames crackled softly, warming her skin for a moment. She let herself imagine it, a place where she was not cursed, a place where she was not unwanted, a place where someone looked at her, not with fear, but with kindness. Her heart ached at the thought, because she knew dreams had a way of breaking. And when they broke, they hurt worse than hunger. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His voice was steady but quiet. "You can stay here until you are strong again," he said. "I will not send you back into the storm." The room was silent, except for the fire. Lyra's breath caught in her chest. She wanted to argue. She wanted to say she did not deserve it, but her voice would not come. Her lips trembled, and her hands pressed against her knees to stop them from shaking. Finally, she whispered, "Why me?" Ethan's answer was simple, but it carried weight. "Because you were there," he said. "Because you needed help." Her eyes lowered. A tear slipped free before she could stop it. It fell onto her hand, warm against her skin. She quickly wiped it away, hoping he had not seen, but Ethan did not call attention to it. He only sat quietly, letting the silence be enough. The night dragged on, the rain still falling outside. But inside the fire burned bright. Lyra leaned closer to the warmth, her eyes heavy, her body tired beyond measure, for the first time in years. She felt safe enough to close them. Ethan stood, gently taking the empty bowl to the kitchen. He glanced back at her. She had curled near the fire, her breathing slow, her face softened in sleep. The storm outside could not touch her here. Not tonight. And in that small home, with firelight wrapping her in its glow, the widow who once had nothing, now had warmth. Asterisk. The fire crackled through the night. Lyra sat curled close to it, the warmth soaking into her bones. But even as her body softened in the glow, her mind would not rest. She had not slept peacefully in years, and though her eyes closed, memories came rushing back like shadows that refused to leave when she stirred awake. The storm was still falling outside. Ethan was sitting by the window, his figure outlined in the dim light. He was awake, watching the rain. He turned when he noticed her move, his face calm. "Did you rest?" he asked softly. Lyra nodded faintly, though her heart was heavy. She wanted to believe she had found safety, but the weight of her past sat in her chest, pressing against every breath. She whispered, "I cannot stay. They will not allow it. If they learn I am here, they will hate you. They will come." Ethan did not answer right away. He only studied her, his eyes steady, his silence stronger than words. After a moment, he spoke. "Then tell me, why do they hate you so much? What crime could be so great?" The question cut into her. It was one thing to be cursed, another to speak it aloud. For years, she had carried the shame in silence, afraid that if she told her story, others would spit at her as well. But Ethan's voice was not mocking. It was not cruel. It was only patient, waiting for her truth. Her hands clenched on her knees, her nails pressing into her skin. She finally lifted her eyes to the fire, unable to meet his gaze. "I was married once," she began. Her voice was thin. "He was strong, respected, loved by the clan, but he died. He died in the hunt, and when he fell, they looked at me. They said it was because of me. They said the spirits cursed him through me." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to go on. "They dragged me from his body. They screamed that I carried death. They marked my door with ash. They warned all families never to take me in. They called me a widow, cursed to bring ruin. And so no one opened their doors, no one shared their food, even children threw MD. Even children threw stones when I passed, because that is what they were taught. Her eyes blurred with tears. She shook her head, whispering. I buried him with my own hands, and when the grave was filled, I had nothing. Not even a place to rest my head. The fire popped, the only sound filling the silence after her. Words. Lyra bit her lip hard, ashamed she had spoken so much. She expected Ethan to frown, to back away, to tell her she should leave before she brought him misfortune. But Ethan did not move. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. His voice was firm but gentle. They blamed you for his death, even though you had no hand in it. She flinched at the truth in his words. Her lips trembled. It doesn't matter. Belief is stronger than truth. They believe I am cursed, and so I am. No one will ever accept me. Not my people, not my clan. Ethan's brow furrowed. His jaw tightened as though the injustice burned inside him. Then they are fools, he said sharply. Loss is not a curse, and grief is not a crime. You are not to blame for his death. They threw you away because it was easier than facing their own fear. The words struck her harder than she expected. No one had ever defended her like this. No one had ever said she was not cursed, not guilty, not ruined. She stared at him, her chest aching. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she felt something shift inside her, like the tiniest spark pushing back against years of darkness. But she was afraid of that spark, afraid it would die out the moment she touched it. Her voice was barely a whisper. You don't understand. If they know I am here, they will turn against you too. They will burn your home. They will call you cursed. They will take everything from you. Ethan's eyes did not waver. His tone was steady as stone. Let them try, he said. I do not fear them. I do not fear curses. What I fear is leaving someone to suffer when I could have helped. Her heart twisted at his words. Her people would have called him reckless. Her people would have called him mad, yet sitting there in the glow of his fire. She could not call him anything but strong. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The rain beat harder against the roof. The fire snapped softly. Lyra's breathing grew uneven, but slowly she leaned back, letting her body relax for the first time in years. Her past still clung to her like chains. The voices of her clan still echoed in her mind. She still saw the grave she had dug with her own hands. She still felt the stones hitting her back as she walked away with nothing. But Ethan's words cut through the chains, even if only a little, for the first time. She wondered if her life was not over. For the first time, she wondered if warmth could belong to her again. As she sat near the fire, her eyes drifting shut, she thought of her husband. She whispered in her heart, asking his spirit if it was wrong to accept kindness, if it was wrong to let someone else carry her pain for a while. And though no answer came, the fire seemed to burn brighter, and she allowed herself to breathe. The shadows of the past had not left her, but in Ethan's home, they were no longer so heavy. The morning light broke through gray clouds. The storm had passed, but the ground was still wet. Ethan rose early and prepared to go to the market. Lyra stood near the doorway, uncertain if she should follow. She clutched his coat tightly, the same one he had draped over her in the rain. Her heart told her not to step outside, for the world out there had never welcomed her. But Ethan looked at her and said calmly, "Stay close to me." His voice was steady, without fear. His words made her take a slow breath. And she nodded. They walked together through the streets. The market was alive with noise. Vendors shouted, children darted between stalls. The smell of food and spices filled the air. It should have been comforting. But for Lyra, it was sharp. Every eye turned, every whisper carried her name. Widow, cursed, unwanted. She felt the sting of their stares. Her hands tightened around the coat. She wanted to run back to the safety of the fire, but Ethan kept walking. He moved through the crowd with confidence, as though their words had no power. "Is that her?" Someone muttered near the fruit stand. "The cursed one," another whispered. "How can the human allow her near him?" one merchant spat, shaking his head. "He'll lose everything." The words pierced her. She lowered her gaze, her steps faltering. She wanted to beg Ethan to let her go back, to hide where no one could see her, but before she could speak, Ethan placed his hand lightly on her arm. Guiding her forward, his touch was firm, steady. Like an anchor pulling her out of the storm, they stopped at a bread stall. The merchant's eyes narrowed as he saw Lyra, his lips curled in disgust. "I don't serve her kind," he said coldly. Ethan's eyes hardened. His voice was calm, but there was steel behind it. "You'll serve me," he said, "and she is with me." The merchant's face darkened. "She cursed your house. She cursed your life. Throw her out now while you still can." Lyra's chest tightened. Shame and fear flooded her. She wanted to speak, to tell Ethan not to fight for her, but he stood his ground. His voice cut through the crowd. Louder this time, "She is no curse. She is no danger. She is a person, and I will not turn her away." The whispers grew louder. Some gasped, some laughed bitterly. A few shook their heads and muttered about human foolishness. But a small silence fell around them. People stared, shocked that a human would speak so openly against their belief. The merchant scowled, but his hands trembled as he set the bread on the counter. Ethan placed coins down firmly, his eyes never leaving the man's. He took the bread and handed it to Lyra without hesitation. Her hands shook as she accepted it. She could hardly breathe. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever spoken for her in front of so many eyes. She felt the weight of the moment pressing into her heart as they moved through the market. More whispers followed them. Some voices were sharp with hatred, others carried doubt. A few younger faces even watched in silence, their eyes wide, as if they saw something they had never considered before. Lyra walked closer to Ethan now. The bread clutched to her chest. His presence shielded her from the storm of voices. But her heart still ached. She whispered, "You should not have done that. They will remember your words. They will not forgive you." Ethan glanced down at her. His tone was steady. "Then let them remember. Some things must be said. Some truths cannot stay silent forever." Her lips trembled. She wanted to argue, but deep inside, something stirred. His courage was not like hers. His strength was not built from silence. His strength was built from standing firm. She had never seen anyone face the whispers without fear. As they returned home, the weight of the crowd's eyes still clung to her. When the door closed behind them, she leaned against the wall, her breath heavy. Ethan placed the bread on the table and looked at her. "You are not alone anymore," he said quietly. Her eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth with her hands. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Why do you do this for me? Why do you stand against them for me?" Ethan's answer was calm. "Because you are worth it. Because no one deserves to be treated like nothing." The words shattered her silence. Her tears spilled freely. She sank into the chair by the fire, clutching the bread as if it were the most precious thing in the world. For years, she had been told she was cursed, worthless, a shadow. But in this small home, with this human, she was seen, outside. The whispers of the market still spread. Rumors traveled quickly. Some would hate, some would doubt. But something new had begun for the first time. Someone had stood for her, and the world had seen it. And for Lyra, that single act was more powerful than any fire. The days that followed were heavy with silence. The market whispers had spread. and soon the entire street spoke of the human who had taken in the widow. Some said he was foolish. Some said he was cursed already. Others muttered that it was only a matter of time before misfortune struck his home. Lyra could feel the weight of those eyes even when she stayed inside. Each night she sat near the fire, but warmth no longer reached her heart. Her fear returned stronger than ever. She whispered to Ethan more than once, "You must let me go. If they come, they will harm you." Ethan never wavered. His answer was always the same, steady as stone. "I will not send you out into the cold. Let them come if they must." But the whispers grew into anger, and anger, when left unchecked, became fire. It happened on a night when the moon was hidden. The village slept under clouds. The wind carried smoke before Lyra even noticed the sound of footsteps outside. She rose from her chair, her hands trembling, a faint orange glow pressed against the window. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. He was already moving toward the door, his expression hard. The shouts came next. A dozen voices, maybe more. "Send her out." One man roared, "Throw her into the street before she curses us all." Another shouted. Flames licked at the wooden fence that circled Ethan's yard. The fire spread quickly, snapping and crackling in the night. Lyra's heart pounded. She rushed to Ethan, grabbing his arm. "Please, let me go," she begged, her voice desperate. "If I leave now, they will stop. They only want me, not you." But Ethan pulled her gently behind him. His voice was low, calm but strong. "No," he said, "they will not have you, not while I still stand." The door rattled as fists pounded against it. Smoke seeped through the cracks. Lyra covered her mouth, choking on the bitter air. Her mind screamed with terror. The same voices that had cast her out now demanded her life. Ethan grabbed a weapon. From beside the door, a simple iron bar. He stood tall, his shoulders squared. His voice boomed through the door. "If you want her gone, you will face me first." The crowd outside fell silent for a heartbeat. Shock carried in their voices. Then came the anger again, louder than before. "Human, you don't know what you protect." One shouted, "She is death. She is ruin." Another cried Ethan's. Reply thundered, "She is none of those things. She is a woman who has suffered enough. I will not let you touch her." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She clung to the edge of his coat. Her voice shook. "They will kill you, Ethan, please. I cannot let you die for me." He looked back at her only once, his eyes burning with a fire stronger than the one outside. "Then live," he said softly. "Live. And prove them wrong." The door cracked under the weight of the crowd. Shadows moved across the windows. The glow of the fire outside painted the walls in orange. The night was alive with chaos, but inside Ethan stood steady. The first board splintered, and a hand reached through. Ethan swung the iron bar. The wood shattered, and the hand withdrew. With a cry, the crowd roared in anger, but none dared push through completely. For all their fury, they feared the strength in his voice. The defiance in his stance, Lyra sank to the floor. Tears streaming down her face, she whispered prayers she had not spoken since her husband's death. Prayers that Ethan would not fall. Prayers that the fire would die before it consumed the house. The minutes dragged like hours. Smoke filled the air. Heat pressed against the walls, but the storm of voices outside slowly weakened. The crowd shouted less, their rage faltering as Ethan's figure remained unbroken in the doorway. Finally, footsteps retreated. One by one, the voices faded, until only the crackle of burning wood remained. Ethan pushed the door open and stepped into the yard. The fire was dying, the fence charred black, rain began to fall again. The storm returning as if the sky itself had chosen its side. He stood there in the rain, the iron bar still in his hand, his chest rising and falling heavily. Lyra followed slowly, her knees weak. She looked at him in disbelief. He had stood against all of them, alone, and they had retreated. Her voice broke as she whispered, Why would you do this for me?" Ethan turned to her, the rain washing soot from his face. His words were simple, "Because you are worth saving." Her tears mixed with the rain. She covered her face with her hands. She had been called worthless, cursed, unwanted for so long. Yet here stood a human who had risked everything to say otherwise. The fire hissed as the rain smothered the last embers. The night grew quiet again. Only the sound of the storm and their breathing filled the air. Lyra stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I am not strong enough to repay this." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and steady. "Then be strong enough to live," he said. The words sank into her heart like firelight against darkness, and for the first time, she began to believe that maybe she was not cursed. Maybe she was not nothing. Maybe she could still belong. That night, in the shadow of fire and rain, Lyra's fate began to change forever. The storm washed the last of the fire away, leaving behind only blackened wood and the smell of smoke. Ethan stood silent in the rain, his iron bars still in hand. Lyra watched him with wide eyes, her heart heavy with fear and awe. He had faced a crowd, he had faced flames, and he had not abandoned her. When he finally turned back toward the house, his voice was steady. "It's over," he said. "They will not return tonight." Lyra followed him inside. Her body was still trembling. Not from the cold, but from everything that had just happened. She sat near the fire once more, staring at the flickering flames. Her hands pressed against her chest as if to hold her heart together. Ethan placed the iron bar down and sat across from her. His face was tired, but his eyes were calm. Silence stretched between them, heavy yet comforting. At last, Lyra whispered, "You should not have done it. You could have been killed. Your home could have burned. All because of me." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I did what was right," he said firmly. "No one deserves to be thrown into the street. No one deserves to be hunted. And you, Lyra, deserve a chance to live." Her lips trembled. She lowered her gaze, tears spilling freely. For so long she had hidden them, swallowed them. But now, they came without stopping. She whispered through her sobs, "I was nothing. For years, I was nothing. Unwanted, hated, cursed, and you. You looked at me as if I mattered." Ethan leaned forward, his voice softer now. "You do matter," he said. "You always did. They only convinced you that you didn't." Her tears fell harder. She buried her face in her hands, her voice breaking. "Why you? Why would a human care? When even my own people turned their backs on me." Ethan's gaze did not waver. His tone was steady. "Because it should not matter what they say. Because kindness costs nothing. Because sometimes it takes only one person to prove the world wrong." The words sank deep into her. She looked at him through blurred eyes. For the first time, she felt something heavy inside her begin to lift. It was not gone, but it was no longer crushing her. It was as if his strength carried some of her burden. The rain outside softened. The fire crackled gently for the first time in years. Peace touched her, fragile but real. She whispered, "I do not know how to repay you." Ethan gave a small smile, one that warmed more than the fire. "You don't need to repay me," he said. "Just live, and find warmth again. That is enough." Her chest tightened at his words. She realized then that warmth was not only in the fire or the food or the coat he had given her. It was in him, in his steady presence, in his refusal to abandon her. The next day, the whispers did not stop. The neighbors watched, suspicious and cold. Some avoided Ethan's home. Others spat on the ground as he passed, but he did not bend. He walked with the same steady steps. Lyra stayed close, afraid yet no longer alone. At the market, the same merchants sneered at her. But this time, Ethan's words from before echoed in her mind. She stood a little taller. She met the stairs without lowering her head. For the first time, she did not hide completely. She realized that maybe curses only lived when people believed in them, and with Ethan beside her, she no longer believed. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the fire in her heart grew. It was not the fire of fear or hatred, but the fire of belonging. In Ethan's home, she found a place at the table. She found laughter in his quiet jokes. She found rest in nights where she could finally sleep without fear of doors slamming in her face. One evening, as they sat by the fire, she looked at him. Her voice was soft but firm. "I thought no home wanted a widow like me. I thought I would die in the cold. But you gave me warmth. You gave me a place. You gave me something I thought was gone forever." Ethan met her gaze, his expression calm. "You were never cursed, Lyra," he said. "You were only waiting for someone who saw the truth, her." Tears came again, but this time they were not only of sorrow. They were of relief, of gratitude, of a heart slowly healing. She leaned closer to the fire, the glow lighting her face, and whispered, "Then maybe I can belong again." Ethan reached across the small table, his hand resting lightly over hers, his voice steady as always. "You already do." The storm outside had long since passed, but inside, the fire burned bright. No longer was she a widow cursed and cast out. No longer was she a shadow in the rain. She was Lyra, and for the first time, she was seen. She was valued. She was home, and in that warmth, she allowed herself to smile, faint but real. The kind of smile that came after years of darkness. The kind of smile that promised tomorrow would be different. The world outside might never change completely, but she had found her place, and that was enough.